you said it yourself. You traveled to Japan from New York City, and it totally changed, right? The city is like just wild things, lights everywhere. And Japan is much different. It's quiet. You were around monks at times, right? Talk about what that meant to you, because I found in traveling around the world, and especially to places where you have very different cultures, and it's a little bit more natural, whether it was, I've been to Africa and been on, little expeditions in Jordan throughout the desert and, with the Bedouins. Like, those were the ones that brought me back to my authentic and made me feel good and healthiest. So talk about that experience and how you put it in the book of going to a place like Japan that is so spiritually inclined and so beautiful in so many different ways, and how that changed you as someone from New York City.
Yeah, I mean, I want people to remember, I love that you are well-traveled yourself, Casper, and that your family hails from Poland also. There's a depth and a wealth of culture and knowledge and experience and inspiration that people rarely find in their own heritage. And I say to all of my readers, if you don't know who you are, then go back to where you came from. It's one of the easiest ailments to feeling better about yourself, is knowing, just the practice of simply knowing that your ancestors went through far harder things than you did. And knowing that your grandparents lived through things like the war, and their parents lived through famine and war. And they saw shit that, we probably couldn't even process. Maybe we saw it in like Call of Duty or something on a game show, or, a fucking video game, but we never, sorry, it's a game show. I meant a video game. I think that we, as humans, have this experience, right? And we take it for granted. Like you and I were both saying, like, my father came on a ship. He said everyone got sick except his baby brother. My grandfather was a POW in Poland, and he had to escape off of a train from the Russians. And it's a real story, even though it feels fake. And when I go back to Japan, like you had asked, I drove with my crew from Beppu, my mother's hometown, to Nagasaki, because we wanted to see how far it was from where my grandparents lived when the bomb was dropped, 1945. And it was 100 miles. It took about 1 hour to get there from where my grandparents' house was. And then we sat and interviewed about 8 different survivors. And I know I talk about the monks all the time, but some of the most prolific work I've ever done in my life was with the survivors of Nagasaki. They had like a light glaze over their eyes from aging, or possibly from radioactive material that is still in their body. They are the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life. It's hard for me to even say this, but I actually think that you can't even compare them to the monks, because the monks chose their path of helping others and being of service, where the Nagasaki survivors were just doing their daily routine when they experienced the most horrific thing that could ever happen. I so often wonder why I choose to talk about war in so many of my books and in my writing. And when I was on CBS News, I was once asked, who would I want to meet if I could meet anyone? And I'm sure people would say, oh yeah, Jimi Hendrix, Marilyn Monroe, and I just said, I just want to talk to my grandparents, because there was a language barrier in Japan and in Poland. And if I could sit with them and hear their stories, I think I might figure out who I am a little bit more, and why I am the way I am. So when we were in Japan, I think that being with my crew of all young people between 20 to 40, my mother joined us, and she took us around her hometown. And I had gone there many times, but you go with a news crew and a documentation crew, it's a little bit different, and your mom can tell you some deeper things. And we went into the mountains where there are Buddhist statues, stone Buddhas called Sekibutsu. And my grandfather used to go there and paint them. He's an impressionist painter. that was on his way to becoming somebody in Tokyo at the Tokyo Metropolitan Museum. And then the Japanese were being bombed out by the US, and my grandfather had to run and flee and go back to the countryside. So it wasn't until my mom and I were there where she said on camera, you know, you're carrying on the torch for your grandpa. I'm like the last Kumai family member that is in the arts. I will be the last person to carry both the Gwizdowski and the Kumai name in certain areas of the family in the arts. And so I feel like a duty as an immigrant child, and I know you will get this, it is my duty to make them proud of what they did and what they sacrificed for me and my sister. I can't even imagine. And I want people to know this too. My grandmother cleaned the hospital in Connecticut, and my grandfather, after being a soldier in Poland and a farmer, he cleaned the hospitals with my grandma. And I sometimes think when people talk down to those who aren't in elite spaces, who do you think is picking up your trash down the street? Who do you think is serving you on the back end when it comes to just everyday packages and shipping and sending you, you know, your overpriced handbags? Like, it is not okay to speak down to others or to think that you are any better than anyone else just because you have a figure or a blue fucking tick next to your name. Nobody gives a shit when you get up to heaven and God asks you what you did on this earth to help others. So the thought behind this is always be kind to others. You don't know where people came from or who they were, what their family went through. And always pay an homage to your family, your grandparents especially, because they lived through far harder things than we ever will. Casper, I don't even think we can complain about these, you know, doctors that market themselves, or even the spiritual practitioners and wellness writers that market themselves, because we owe it to our grandparents to be better, right? Like you and I are better than that. And I think maybe that's where the gift is as well. I got teased terribly as a child, both for being Asian and for having a long Polish last name. And I think God somehow shaped me into the creature I am today to remind people, you know, later in life, be kind, because I think the same kids that made fun of me growing up are now looking at me with eyes of awe when I'm on the Today Show. And I just, you know, remember what that felt like. I remember the kid that made fun of me on Top Chef. There were several of them that were very mean to me and vulgar and disgusting. And I, at 22, knew enough to know to be kind and to take the high road, because I saw my mother and father and my grandparents in the back of my mind, as I know you probably do too, and all of you listening do. And I said, what can I do to make them proud? It would be shameful if I acted like an asshole on TV. So I'm going to do the right thing. And I'm going to continue a family legacy that I could be proud of, so others know that even though it's the harder thing to do, I think being a good person and doing quality work and having integrity in what you do is the right thing for those of us who get it.
Yeah, I think a big thing we could take out of this is, you know, number one, respect your elders. They have so much wisdom with them. I feel like sometimes it's, you know, you look at someone, oh, they don't have a cell phone because they're older, or this and that. You look down upon them. They can't live in this modernized technological world. It's like what they have within them, the experience, the breath of wisdom is just incredible. And to hear what they've sacrificed for you to be able to get here, in a sense. And I say you because it could be anybody. So even we know a little bit of our lineage, right? Of you have Japanese, Polish, I have Polish that go back. I don't even know how far I could go with it, but I do know that, and it definitely makes me who I am. Whereas some people don't. You get the whole, oh, I don't know, I was born here, I'm a mutt, this and that sort of thing going on. But you could always look to ancient civilizations, to generations past. You could ask stories. You could do that investigative work and try to figure it out, even if it means going to one area you think you were from and seeing how they lived for a while, because I think you become very, very grateful. I remember traveling to places outside of the US and going to third world countries when I was young. And I remember being a little brat about it at first and being like, I want to be around my friends playing Nintendo. Why are you taking me to Serengeti for, like, you know, this and that, which is nowadays like, Come on, man. Like everyone wants that. Don't be bitching about that. Like that's very fancy of you almost. But getting there and meeting kids in Kenya that were just so happy and had so little. And I was like, holy shit. Like I was just complaining about not getting the new Sega, like Genesis game and this and that. And, and being away from my friends, my nice house and everything like that. And here are these kids with the biggest smiles, just no clothes on, like going miles for water. And it's like, wow, be grateful, right? So it's like, we have teachers in ourselves, in our lineage, and our grandparents and their great grandparents and so forth. We have teachers around the world as well that are humans too, that we're all connected to. So I feel like even if you don't know, we did. And I think it's beautiful to go to places like I've been to Poland, felt that, been to the concentration camps that I knew some relatives have been at. And wow, that's I can't fathom what that's like at all. But just to know they went through that and now I am here is such a level of appreciation and gratitude. And then you feel connected to others. And I think it changes your perspective of the world. The menial little things in life, the stresses we all get really worked up for don't mean as much. And I do think that's part of the journey, is to go out into the world, connect with others and see and be very grateful for your life. So I think that was something I absolutely kind of pulled out of your story. So thank you for that.